This is going to be a video that's going to be an introduction to how to use vCarve Pro and the ShopBot. This will be specifically geared toward a mini introductory project that we're going to do in our class here, but these skills can be applied to many different ShopBot projects. And so in general, the ShopBot will do the cutting of the material that we select. vCarve Pro is the software that'll be on your computer that will set up the design and what you want the ShopBot to do. So we're going to be doing most of our talking in this video about vCarve Pro and how to set up the material that you're using and what cuts you want the ShopBot to perform. So when you open up vCarve, it's going to look like this. Now, obviously, your computer is going to look different than mine, but once you get vCarve open, you're going to create a new file. And within this new file, we need to first address the job setup. Now, just a couple of hints here. First of all, if you are on a laptop, I know our students are going to be using Chromebooks. If you are on a laptop or a Chromebook, the trackpad doesn't work nearly as well as a mouse does, so I would suggest getting a mouse and plugging it in so that you can maneuver and design a little bit easier. And then the next thing that you start within is you have to know exactly what material you're using. And so the material would be the wood that we've given you that you're going to have the ShopBot work on, the different types of cuts that the ShopBot is going to perform. And for this little project, we're going to keep our job setup the same, single-sided, and then your width and height and thickness should look just like this, 6 inches by 6 inches by 0.253 inches. That's the dimensions of the wood that we're going to give you to work with. And so when you do that, you can see that this panel here is 6 inches in the Y, 6 inches in the X. It shows you your work area and your material here on the screen. So your material should look like this. The Z0 position we're going to keep the same on the material surface. We're going to zero it to the top of the material. The XY is going to be the lower left. That's why there's that little red square there. And then the modeling resolution should be very high. Solid color doesn't really make a difference, so we can just leave it as is. So once your screen looks like this, go ahead and hit OK. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have you tell the ShopBot to perform 2 different what we call tool paths. Tool paths are how you want the ShopBot to cut the material. And you can choose whatever you want as far as your design. You can follow mine exactly. I would suggest that you modify it to personalize it so that you come away with something that you like and that you can have it personalized a little bit more. So we're going to start with what we want our through cut to be. So we want to cut all the way through the material, and you can choose any design. You can choose a rectangle if you want, or an oval or an ellipse. You can do a circle, a star, a different polygon. We're going to keep this pretty simple, so I'm going to go ahead and have you guys start by drawing a circle. Now you can mess around with the dimensions and the diameter and all this stuff however you'd like, but when we go ahead and work with this material, we want to make sure that we're very careful that we're staying away from the edge of the material, especially with this job setup that we're going to have. You don't want to be telling the ShopBot to cut beyond the material. If you cut beyond the material, then it's going to be doing some things that we don't want it to do. So you got to be careful that all of your cuts are within this 6 by 6 range. And so that being said, we're just going to have a smaller type circle with a diameter of 4 inches. And the center point is going to be at X and at Y. It's going to be in the center, so I'm going to go ahead and hit create. If you want to change any of that, you can. But that gives me a circle right in the center of the material. I'm going to go ahead and hit close. And we're going to tell the ShopBot what to do with that in a little bit, but let's finish making our design first. What I would like to do then is to put something in this circle. So we're going to make a little carving or a little design inside the circle. And again, keeping it simple, you can put text in there if you want to draw text. You can have shapes in there. However you'd like for that to happen, you can adjust that as you go. But in this case, we're going to keep it pretty simple, and I'm just going to put a star in the middle of that circle. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the star, and it gives me some settings again. I don't know exactly about the outer radius and inner radius, and you can probably mess with that a little bit, but I'm just going to go ahead and have it be a 5-point star, and I'm going to go ahead and hit create. Now, the first thing you probably notice is that our star is all the way down here in the middle, and if we go ahead and cut around that star, it's not going to be good, because we'll be cutting off of the material. That's going to cause us a lot of trouble. So what I want is I want the star to be in the middle of this circle, because we're going to cut this circle out of the wood, and then we're going to carve the star in the middle. So here's an easy way to do that. Go ahead and select the star, and once you select the star, you can do a couple different things. You could come over here and move the object, and it would give you a bunch of different options on where you want to move it and so on. But I'm going to hit close because that's not the easiest thing to do. This tab is really helpful. It's the Align Selected Objects. So with the star selected, I can go ahead and click on this, and what it will give me some options here is I can align it to the material. So the material is this white square here that I'm working with. And if I click the center icon here, it's going to go ahead and center the star right in the middle of the material. All right, and that's exactly where I want it. And so just to kind of show you that, if somehow you have your circle and it is somehow shifted over, I'm just going to move it over here just to kind of show you what's going on, and your star is not where you want it to be and so on. What you can do is go ahead and click on whatever you want to center and use this Align Selected Objects, and I can go ahead and align it to the material. That's what goes in the center. And I'll show you one other thing too, which is helpful at times. Another way to get the star into the center of the circle, to make sure it's in the center of the circle, is instead of aligning it to the material, I can align it to a selection. So if I select a star, and then if I also, after I select the star, if I also select the circle, and I did that by hitting Shift and Select at the same time, I'll show you again. If you select the star, and then if you hit Shift Select at the same time, then I've selected two things, the star, and then I've selected the circle. Now I can center this on the selection, so it would go right to the middle of the circle, just like that. Or I can put it on the inside edge of the circle, or I can put it on this side. It lets me move it around the circle however I want, and so as you're setting up your design here, say you put some text in here, or maybe you are going to go ahead and put some other objects on here. If you want them to be aligned so it looks nice and neat on your material and on your project, this is really a helpful Align Selected Objects. All right, so I have my circle and I have my star. Now, I'm going to add one more thing in here. I think I'm going to put just one line of text in here. So I'm going to go ahead and do the Draw Text button. And so if you want your initials maybe, or if you want something else on here, I'm going to go ahead and put Mr. H for Mr. Hammond. And I'm going to go ahead and use Times New Roman. And again, you can select some different things here and play with them a little bit if you want. And instead of doing true type, I'm going to do a single line. I'm going to show you why here in just a little bit. And it gives me some options, text height, where I want it to be. If I go ahead and hit apply, you can see now that I have my initials down here at the bottom. So I'm going to hit close. Now obviously I don't want them to be on the bottom. I'm going to put them up here towards the top of the star. And so what I'm going to do then is I'm going to change my spacing a little bit here because I want this to look a little bit different than the way it's looking right now. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take my star and then I'm going to click on it again, and I'm going to just move it to the bottom of my circle. So I kind of like the way it looks right there. Again, you can put it wherever you want. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select my name, and what I'm going to do like before, I'm going to shift select the circle, go here to align selected objects, and I'm going to put it into the middle of the circle like that. Now that's still not where I want it, but now that I know that it's in the middle, I'm going to go ahead and click on it. Just click on my letters, and I'm going to move it up here. All right, now that doesn't look great, that Mr. H, just like that, but for the purpose of this video, we're just going to leave it as is. And I think I am going to go ahead and change the font. I don't really like that font, so I'm going to go back into the text. And I'm not going to do Times New Roman. I'm going to choose Gothic, and it will look like that. So that'll give me a little bit more of a simple look, but I think that's going to be okay. All right. So now I really have three things going on here. I have my circle, I have my star, and I have my text. And now that it's designed and it looks pretty much how I want it, I need to tell the computer and I need to tell the ShopBot how to cut out each of these three things. So I'm going to start with the star. So I'm going to go ahead and select the star. And now we're going to go over here to the toolpaths. The toolpaths tell the computer and the ShopBot how I want to deal with these each individual things that I have on my material. So what I would like for the star to do is I would like for the ShopBot just to carve out the inside of the star. So I would just like to I'm just going to take a little bit of the material off of the inside of the star. And so what that is going to be, that's going to be a pocket toolpath. So if you scroll over to the pocket toolpath and click on it, now we have a bunch of other options. And so here's how we're going to set up a pocket toolpath for this project. The start depth is going to be 0 because I want it to start right at the top of the material. This is telling me how deep I want it to cut. Now my material is only 0.253 inches, so I definitely don't want it to cut 0.735. That would cut all the way through the material and more. That's not what I want. I just want to take a little bit off. So I'm going to put 0.05 inches. It's just going to shave a little bit off of the top of the material. Now, the next thing we need to select is what kind of tool we want it to use. And these are the different bits. And now the teacher, unless you're really experienced, will be changing the bits for you, but you need to tell the computer what bit you're going to be using. So the tool that we're going to use for this is going to be the one just like it says here, 1/4 inch upcut, which is 52/910. You can go ahead and select it, hit OK. The number of passes are recommended for you. If you would like to see what it does, it recommends the number of passes. I'm just going to leave it at 1. That basically tells me how many times it's going to pass over to cut out that 0.05 inches. So I'm going to leave that. I don't need to worry about anything else here. Ramp plunges, I don't need to do anything else. And now I'm going to go all the way down to the name, and I'm going to name this Star Pocket so that I know that the star is what we're working with right now and that we're going to pocket the star. So it's going to stay, the bit's going to stay inside the star, and it's going to carve it out for me. I hit calculate, and now it is showing the path that the bit is going to take to give me that star look right there. It also gives me a chance to get a preview, and so the previews are very accurate. So if I hit preview selected toolpath, it will show that it actually carved it out. And if you scroll around here a little bit, you can see now that I have a star carved into my material. All right, so now I go back to my 2D view, and now I don't want to deal with my star anymore. Now I want to deal with these letters. So I'm going to select my letters, and what I want for my letters is I'm not going to carve them out like a pocket. What I want the bit to do is just to stay right on top of the letters and do what's called a profile cut. A profile cut will go right along the profile of what I've selected. And so I'm going to choose this for a profile toolpath. And we're starting at 0 again. Now again, how deep do I want it to cut? Well, I definitely don't want it to cut 0.272 because that would carve this all the way through the material. So what I do want it to do is, just like when I shaved a little bit off of the star, I want to shave a little bit off for the letters. And so I'm just going to go with 0.05 inches again. Now this tool, I could use the same tool, the 1/4 inch upcut if I wanted to. But if you can imagine a 1/4 inch bit doing this, it's going to really bleed over into the other letters and you're not going to be able to see really what's going on there. So instead of using a 1/4 inch upcut, a bit that's good for carving letters is a 60-degree V bit. It has a nice point on it, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit OK. And the V bit will do good carving for letters. One pass. This is important when you do a profile cut. How do I want the bit to go? Do I want the bit to go on the outside of the lines? Do I want it to go on the inside of the line, or do I want it to go directly on top of the line? Because there's thickness to the bit, you have to be careful on what you choose. In this case, I want it to go right on top of those lines, so it carves my initials in there, and so I'm going to leave it on. We don't need any other options here, and so I'm going to go ahead and go all the way down, and I'm going to call this letters profile. And I'm going to put V bit because I'm using the V bit instead of the 1/4 inch bit. And calculate. And now I can preview this one. I'll say preview select toolpath, and you can see how it has carved my initials right into the material. All right, so we got one more thing to do, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to select the circle. For the circle is, now I want a cut all the way through the material because I want to get rid of all this other part, and I just want a circle of material with the star and with my initials on there. So that is also going to be a profile cut. All right, and the profile cut that we're going to do, we're going to start it at 0. We are going to want to go all the way through the material, and I tested this material out for this particular project, and to get all the way through, and you want to make sure you get all the way through, and even if you go a little bit too far, that's better than coming up short. And so for the cut depth, we want to go 0.272 inches. Remember, the depth of the material was 0.253, so we're going a little bit deeper, but that's okay. That's what we want to do. Now, the bit that we want to select, we're going to go back to the 1/4 inch upcut. And I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. The passes that we're going to use, it says 1 pass. I would like for this to use 2 passes instead. So if you're going to go all the way through the material, go ahead and hit 2. So that we're going to have 2 passes. That means it's going to go around twice. So it's going to take a little bit each time. And now we have to decide what we want to do here. Do we want to do on, inside, or outside? I want that whole circle to be my material, so I'm going to have it go outside. And I have plenty of room here, so even if the bit goes on the outside of the material, on the outside of the circle, I'm not going to be going off of the material. So I'm going to go ahead and hit outside. If your circle is closer to the edge of the material, then you would do inside or on, because you definitely don't want to go to the edge of this material. All right, then here's pretty much one more important thing here as far as this toolpath is that we want to add tabs. What tabs are would be, because I'm going to cut this all the way out, the material is going to be held down to the machine, but once I cut all the way through, then the circle will be loose, and if it's loose, it's going to fly off, and it could be dangerous, and it will also ruin our design. So we need something to hold it down. So if I hit my tabs of 0.5 inches and 0.125 inches, you can go ahead and copy those onto your toolpath. I'm going to select 3D tabs, and if I hit Edit Tabs, basically what I can do is I can go through here and I can select spots where I want there to be a little bit of a connection between my project and the material. So I'm going to select 3 tabs. You should select a couple of tabs if you're doing a square or a rectangle or whatever. Make sure that you have a couple tabs. Put them on there and then hit close. And so now we have tabs on there. Ramps, we do want to add ramps. What ramps does is basically it allows the bit to go into the material a little bit smoother. So you can go ahead and have smooth in a distance of 2 inches. And now I'm going to call this the circle. I'm going to call it a through cut because it's going to cut all the way through. And then I go ahead and hit calculate. This is important. You want to make sure you read this. It says the current tool cutting depth will exceed the material thickness. 0.253 is the material thickness, and then I just told it to cut 0.272 deep. And I'm okay with that because I've calculated that ahead of time, that even though that's a little bit thicker than the material, it's still going to be good. We want to make sure that it goes all the way through. And so if it says this, you can hit OK. If this says 0.572, that means it's going way too deep and you're not going to want to do that. But if it's in the range where you're okay with and that you've been instructed to do, then you can go ahead and hit OK. All right, then we'll preview this. You can see it's going to go around 2 times, and you can see those tabs I added on there so that it is looking now exactly how I want it to look. Those tabs will hold it on. And then once we're done with the project, we take the material off. You can just use a little razor blade to knock those tabs off, a little sandpaper, and it comes out nice and smooth. So now we are good to go. We have our 3 tool paths, the star pocket, the V-bit with the letters, and the circle through cut. We're going to change the bit from a 1/4 inch to a V-bit and then back to a 1/4 inch. Your teacher will help you with that. Last thing that I'll talk about as far as these tool paths, we want to make sure they're in the right order. I did the circle through cut, which is this cut at the very end, because if you cut this first, it's going to weaken the material. And then when it's weak with just those tabs on there, if you're trying to do the star and the letters, those tabs might break and then the material is going to shift and your project's going to be ruined. So the through cut is almost always the last cut you do. You do all the surface cutting and carving, and then you do the through cut at the end. So I'm going to hit close. Then you're going to do 2 things. One, you're going to go ahead and save your work. So go ahead and go over here and save it. Make sure that you are saving it somewhere where you can find it again. So it'll be all saved. And then after that, you need to create the file. So you're going to go ahead and hit these tool paths, all the tool paths that you want. You're going to go ahead and create the file that you're going to bring over to the ShopBot computer. Then the ShopBot will run that file. And to do that, you go ahead and hit this Save Toolpath function, and it has all 3 toolpaths: star pocket, letters profile, circle through cut. You're going to go ahead and keep this selected, ShopBot in inches, and you're going to go ahead and save your toolpath to a file. So then you'll save that toolpath. I would name it, in this case, intro project, right? You're going to go ahead and save it. Once you save it, then you'll be able to give that file to your teacher. Your teacher will take it over to the ShopBot computer and make sure all the bits are ready and all the ShopBot stuff is done correctly, and you'll go ahead and be able to cut it out. So that is a rundown of 3 different tool paths, how to set up some different things, and I hope you have a good introduction project. Obviously, go back and watch some of this again and pause it and go step by step through it. If you have any questions, make sure that you get your questions asked, and I'm sure your teacher will be double checking everything before you actually cut it out so that you're not wasting material or doing anything that might be dangerous. So that is it. Hope you have fun with this introduction